Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 15 of the Dateable AF podcast. Today, our topic is she a fun drunk or a red flag? So, we've all been there. You're 3 drinks in, and suddenly your date is starting to sing Indigo Girls at the top of her lungs, and you're trying to figure out if this is cute or if she is chaos.
Well, so today in our brief overview of the episodes, we're going to talk about things like spotting substance-related red flags in early dating.
Yep, because we definitely have all seen those. We're also going to talk about how do you know if something's a pattern or if it's just a one off? Like, did they just behave badly this one time, or is this something that you're starting to see a pattern of?
And I also think that you can sing the Girls really loud and not be considered a bad drunk. I'm just going to say
Oh, absolutely. Doesn't everyone want to sing the Indigo Girls after a few drinks?
Or even before.
Yeah.
I did that.
True that.
We're also going to talk about what it's like to date someone sober, as Sarah will speak more to that.
Yeah, definitely. We'll talk about what that's like from the perspective of the drinker and also the perspective of the sober person, kind of what that's like. And then just talking in general about where playfulness ends and where problematic behavior begins. So it should be a good episode for you guys. Or not.
I don't know what stories I can tell.
Well, I could tell a few about you. I feel like there was one Halloween where you were dressed up in camo and you got kind of drunk. But that was a long time ago.
I had the
I remember this.
I cop to that. I do cop to that.
Yep. Well, part of why we're talking about this today is I will tell on myself that we've alluded to this on the podcast or maybe even said it out loud, but I stopped drinking about 5.5 years ago. So I was going to just tell a little bit of my journey and kind of how I came to that decision. Luckily, I feel super lucky and grateful that nothing too extreme happened to me. I did not go to jail. I did not get a DUI. None of those things happened. I didn't wreck my relationship, but I did have 3 incidents that happened in a pretty short period of time that made me question the amount of alcohol that I was drinking. Just mostly things where I acted a fool and woke up in the morning and kind of regretted it. One of the times was when we were living in Tulum. I was at my CrossFit Posada, which is like their Christmas party. And there was this really attractive straight woman that went to my CrossFit. And I was there with my wife at this party and had a lot of alcohol. And I was saying, Joe, look at Gabby. Isn't she hot? And Joe's like, Sarah, Gabby's like 5 feet away from us. She can hear exactly what you're saying. And I'm like, I know, but isn't she hot? And I woke up in the morning and felt a lot of regret about making a fool of myself in front of hot Gabby. So anyway, there were just 3 sort of minor incidents like that I just woke up one day and was like, I don't want to be this person. And over the years, when Joe and I first met, we drank a lot, like in a fun way. We would have happy hour out every day, either go out or at our house. And nothing super problematic happened. I am more of a like fun, jovial drinker than like I didn't get mad and I didn't get mean, but I did. Like I would always be the person who wanted to stay till the very end. And Joe would be like, dear God, let's go home. And I was like, no, let's stay. Let's just have one more drink or let's sing one more karaoke song.
And that's when you end up at a tattoo parlor or
this could have happened a time or two. talking Joe into doing things she really didn't want to do. But anyway, so I decided, the other thing I'll say is that over the years before I decided to quit altogether, I had done many, many dry Januaries, many sober Octobers, many Whole 30s or cleanses where I stopped drinking for a period of time. And I also once took a year off of drinking to prove to myself that I did not have a drinking problem. Because if you can quit for a year, you of course don't have a problem, right? So what happened about 6 months into that year was that I started counting down. I was like, oh, in only 6 more months, I can have a drink. Oh, in only, 4 months and 27 days, I can have a drink. So I was on the countdown, just looking so forward to drinking again. which I always say, like, if there's some other substance, like if I told you you could never eat bananas again, even if you really love bananas, you wouldn't probably have a reaction to it. But people have a really strong reaction to the idea that they won't be drinking alcohol ever again. So if you're that person, just, you might want to take a look at it. But anyway, we're here today to talk about how drinking can impact early dating, whether that's your drinking or looking at the drinking of the person you're dating. So yeah, let's dive into talking about that. You're on mute.
Yeah, it's a great topic, and thanks for sharing your personal experience with that. Uh, and one thing, well, there are a couple of things about this topic that I think are very interesting and tricky. One is this transition from your college days and your early young life, where drinking heavily and doing crazy things is, for better or for worse, kind of sanctioned.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah, normal part of the culture.
seems a little bit appropriate. And what I've noticed is when people don't transition well into adulthood and they just keep doing that um, in their adult life. And that's definitely when I went to college with a handful of people where I saw them do that. And they just didn't make that transition well. And I think that was certainly a red flag.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and I think we normalize things by hanging out with people who do the same behaviors we do. So I can literally remember telling Joe that I didn't want to go on vacation with this couple of friends that we had because they don't drink very much and they're not very fun.
Yeah.
And because, we were drinking so much and that's what we did on vacation. We wanted to party it up. And these women weren't that fun because they didn't drink that much.
And it is also sort of to that point, it is a social lubricant. And so it helps, I think, when you're going out on a date, it helps the conversation flow. When you're first meeting somebody, it helps. And that if everybody's doing it, everybody's sort of in the same vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, Sarah, you can speak to this because I'm typically the one that is having a drink, and you're typically the one not having a drink, and you're sitting in the group with the people who typically are drinking.
Yeah,
and
almost
I know,
always.
yeah, and I know that that's probably a very different experience. I mean, you're having a very different experience than we're having, probably.
Yeah, it is. It's interesting. And usually I will say I'm almost never bothered by that. It's fine. Like I'm around drinking people almost daily. And I don't feel triggered, for lack of a better word. I never feel tempted to drink just because I made my own decision about it. And it's not based on what other people do. But there is this point at which a line gets crossed and it's no longer fun for me. So when people are just like having a drink, two drinks, it's fine. When people start having the third drink or the fourth drink, it's not that fun to be the sober person because everyone else is like slurring, repeating their stories and, getting sloppy. And that's hard to be around for sure.
Yeah. Do you think
Yeah.
that is your experience always that the numbers match the behaviors? The number of drinks directly correlate to?
I know people want to think that it doesn't, but it almost always does. Like, I don't know anyone who's impaired really at two drinks.
Mm-hmm.
Almost everyone starts to get somewhat impaired. And I'm talking about in a row. If you're talking like a 6-hour period of time and you have 3 drinks over 6 hours, I'm not talking about that. But if you're sitting and having drink after drink after drink, by the time you're on your third drink, your behavior has changed. And you probably don't think that it has, but I, as the non-drinker in the group, will tell you that yes, your behavior does change after drink 3. So yeah, anyway, and I know that what we're talking about is probably a little bit controversial, and I know some of you are going to have a reaction to this, and that's okay. I'm open to feedback. I also don't feel like I need to impose my ideas on anyone else. I think it's a personal journey that everybody has to decide for themselves.
And that's spot on with this conversation we're going to have today about how you deal with this related to dating someone, because I do think that you have to be very solid in your own sobriety, your own understanding of why you're there, what it means to you, how you're dealing with it before you decide or ever decide that you're going to somehow mix that up with somebody's lack thereof.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. Just today on a radio show in Austin, there's a radio show that does a segment called Waiting by the Phone, and it's about someone who gets ghosted. They had a date with someone and it doesn't go well, so they call into the show. And today's episode was so interesting that we were recording today, was about a couple that had gone on a date, and the guy called into the radio station and said, "We had a great time, we connected, we stayed for hours, and I just don't understand why she ghosted me." Well, they called the woman to find out what happened, and she said, "We did have a great time. The guy was awesome, but he told me on the date that he didn't drink. And so then I didn't drink on the date because I felt awkward. And I just don't see myself ever being with someone who doesn't drink." And the guy was interesting because he didn't think he had a problem. He had just decided, kind of for health reasons, to give it up. And he told the woman on the date, "Have a drink. It doesn't bother me." But in her mind, she said when she fast forwarded into the future, she couldn't see herself dating a non-drinker.
I think that's a tricky thing, because both people have to be confident in why they're there. I mean, the space they're taking up in that area, because I do think you could do that. Like, easily, I would see not drinking if somebody who's not drinking on your first date. You just don't. But then you have the conversation of how's that going to go for you date after date. If you want to keep dating this person, she's made a decision that he didn't even have a part of. I mean,
Yeah. And it says more about her than it does about him, because why do you care what's in my glass?
Yeah.
Either way, what you care about is if someone's behavior changes as a result of a substance. That's in my personal opinion. But otherwise, why would I care what's in your glass? If you're drinking an alcoholic drink or a non-alcoholic drink, it doesn't matter. What matters is that if you drink too much of that, your behavior is going to change. Yeah, I don't know. I thought that was interesting, but I've had numerous clients over the years tell me they would never date someone sober.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's it. That is very interesting. And there's, as you know, it definitely can change the dynamics of how you do certain things. I mean, I know you and Joe have had to make some adjustments because that was not how she entered with you.
Right.
But the adjustments, at least my experience with you guys, is more the adjustment is just everybody just does what they feel comfortable doing. If we go to dinner, you order what you want to order, and Joe orders what she wants to order. And
yeah, absolutely.
And so I again, the problem is when people, either way, where your sobriety gets tangled up in somebody else's lack thereof, or you're a drinker that just does not have, you drink too much and you don't have good boundaries. I mean,
yeah,
absolutely. It's a problem.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I would say for me, I don't try to control what Joe does. She's an adult who can do what she wants to do. I would say I wouldn't want to be with a partner who consistently overdrank, because they're not present.
Yeah.
And that's not fun to be with someone who's not present. So, but other than that, you shouldn't, I personally don't think you should care whether another person's drinking or not, unless it impacts their behavior.
To our audience, since we are playing to the audience of lesbian, queer women, yes, and doing a little research, that we as a community tend to drink more in general in our relationships than heterosexual couples do. At least that's the data that I looked at.
And why do you think that is? Like, what makes that happen?
Well, I mean, some of that they related to more of a bar culture. I don't know. I think I'm a little too old to maybe fully understand that, because I'm not a part of a bar culture and haven't been for years.
But those were some good times.
Yes, they were. We had some really good times. And then we had some not so good times too.
This is true. I was wondering too, though, because as a rule, and I don't even know if this statistic would be true anymore, but I would say as a rule, lesbian couples don't have kids as often as straight couples. And so I think you have fewer constraints if you don't have kids. I mean, I wonder if you compared childless lesbian couples to childless heterosexual couples or childless male couples, if things would level out more, because if you got a kid and you got to wake up in the next morning to get them to school, or if you have to stay sober because you might have to pick your kid up from sports practice or something, it does sort of change your dynamic around drinking. But if you don't have that constraint, you're free to drink more. So I wonder if that plays into it.
It could. The other thing that I read about was just the dealing maybe with trauma and sexual abuse, and some of those things that were coping mechanisms.
Yeah, that's true. Do you think those things, this is another sort of going down a rabbit trail, but do you think those things happen, more often in lesbian culture than not?
I don't know the answer to that. I would tell you, and maybe you do know the answer to that.
I don't.
I would guess that probably not more. Maybe just an acknowledgement of it. I mean, I would venture to guess that maybe lesbian women, queer women address their trauma more.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting thing to look up, because that's maybe women in general acknowledge those things more, and definitely women are more likely to go to therapy than men.
Yeah. So those things are probably all sort of tangled up, but I don't really know the answer to that. Yeah.
Yeah, good question. Well, for sure, at the beginning of dating, well, first of all, alcohol is pretty ubiquitous in our culture. Like, alcohol is a part of most of our social occasions. And I think that we have this idea that drinking can be used for calming your nerves, which of course people are nervous on a first date. So it's likely that people are going to drink on a first date. It gives people a feeling of confidence that they might not have otherwise. And I think also we don't want to be super vulnerable at the beginning. And alcohol gives us this sort of false bravado. So we avoid the real vulnerability that might come with, being completely sober on a first date.
Yeah. And I think those things are, all those things are true. And I believe that, again, looking at someone where they go in wanting to they walk into a party, they don't know anybody. And, you want to go straight to the bar, grab a cocktail, glass of wine, and then you begin your mingling. And because you feel that or want to do that, I don't know if you would consider that a red flag. I wouldn't. But if that is like they're 10 drinks into it and that's the only way, then yes, that's a big red flag to me. But I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
Yeah, I do not consider that a red flag. I think it is what most people do. I think that it's the exception to not go grab a drink when you first get to a party. So no, I don't think that in itself is a red flag. I could, we could go deeper into what it's like to do it without that, and like learning the skills of feeling confident and feeling socially lubricated without that substance. But I don't think that there's something wrong, or I don't think you should be worried if the person you're dating goes and grabs a drink when they first arrive at a party. I think most people are probably going to do that. That seems pretty normal.
It does. The other thing I would notice probably if I'm on a date is if I'm, let's say, out on a date and someone's taking me somewhere for the first time, that if they're introducing me around or things like that, that maybe you just don't make a beeline for the cocktail bar. You just don't make that the main focus in the beginning. Because that I might notice that. Like, I will graciously meet some people. You can introduce me to your friends or something. And then eventually, can I get you a drink? Can you get me a drink, sort of thing. But I think if you have somebody come in and they just go, all of a sudden you're going to introduce them, you turn around and they're gone because they're going to grab a cocktail,
Yes. Yeah, I think that's true, that you might look at that as something that's not so great. So how do we determine whether someone's just a fun drunk or if there might be some red flags?
Well, they can be a fun drunk and it can be red flag. I
Oh, true
mean,
that.
it's for sure. But to your question, I don't know about the term fun drunk because yes, there are definitely people who I've been around that when they drink, and this was more in my earlier years, but I have been around people who drink and their personality changes drastically and it's not, then they get into a surly place.
Mhm.
People who drink and they just become funnier and even more fun than they already are, but sometimes it's not a lot of fun.
Yeah.
uh,
Yep.
so I've seen both of those things. I just my personal thing is that I sort of am not interested in the whole drunk thing, period. Whether you're a fun drunk or you're a surly drunk or the whole thing, I'm just more interested in the moderation. Let's have a little wine, have good conversation. And I'm not, once somebody starts, from my perspective, if I'm noticing it, they
Mhm.
start doing a lot of goofy stuff, I get sort of, you'll find me
Turned off
kind
by
of,
that.
yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, for you, what are your signs that somebody's starting to go over that line from, I'm having a glass of wine to, oh, I've had a little bit too much?
I do think if they're doing things that you know they would not ordinarily do, like
Mhm.
singing an Indigo Girls song really loud, and they don't even sing in the car,
Yep.
then that might be a sign. I also think when they start getting in personal space, they
Uh-huh.
they're all of a sudden they're wanting to touch you a lot, and but you
Yep.
remember that you remember that chick. Okay, I'm gonna have to bring this up. When we would go to the bar, was it Rainbow at the time? I don't remember. I think
Probably.
it's Rainbow. The one that
Mhm.
always spilled beer on me.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? And you
Yep.
thought she was so funny. And she would come over and she would hang on us, have her arm around me. Next thing I know, I've got beer down my, I just made me crazy. And you just,
Hilarious.
yes, you thought she was hilarious. I was always mad about it. I was like, oh, no. I got to where I'm like, if I see her coming, I'm leaving. I'm going somewhere else in the bar. You can come find me later.
I remember that. And I was drunk, so I didn't care. That's why I thought it was hilarious.
No. So
No.
that's one that is a big no. And also when people are loud or they want to do things all of a sudden that are very much out of the norm of what you're doing.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, it's like you don't have social awareness when you've crossed that line, and so you might be too loud, or you might, like I said, I would want to stay too late at things, and that I would never do if I wasn't impaired. So, yep. So, if someone crossed that line on a first date, would that be a red flag for you?
that's a very good question. I would it would be very suspect for me. Very suspect.
Yep. I would say that that is a red flag because people are generally on their best behavior on a first date. And so if someone overdrinks to a point where their behavior has changed and they're being obnoxious on your very first date, that is a sign of how things will go in the future, I think.
Yeah, more than likely. I mean, I guess there's always an exception of someone who I have seen people who don't really drink that much, and then they're nervous and they drink more than they usually do, and they don't, deal well with it. And I could see where that would be a potential situation. But at this age and this stage in our lives, I kind of expect that you have some sense of that.
Yep. And if that's how you cope with your anxiety on a first date, that is also how you're going to cope with your anxiety about other things
Mm.
later. So just food for thought. If you go out with someone and they get super drunk on your first date, I would say you should probably take a step back and look at that. Another thing that I think can be a red flag is someone who can't have fun without drinking,
Yeah.
especially, I mean, there are so many fun things to do that don't involve drinking. You could go on a hike, you could play a sport, you could go to a movie. Well, nowadays at the movies, you also have, alcohol is pretty much available everywhere. But if the person feels like they can't do a normal activity without including alcohol, I think that that's something you should pay attention to at the beginning.
Yeah, and I think so too. And I also think that it is great for you to mix up your opportunities with someone just so that you can experience them in different ways when you're
Mhm.
dating. So, for instance, um, and this was not a date, but recently I got to know someone that's just charming and really fun and interesting. But the first opportunity we met over coffee,
Mhm.
and which is a great way to meet somebody, and it doesn't involve any of that other stuff. So coffee, and then the second time that we got together, because we actually really enjoyed one another, was over wine and food, and it
Mhm.
was lovely. And then the next time we got together, we had lunch and went shopping, which
Hmm.
and it had nothing to do with alcohol.
Yeah.
Um, and what I loved was just that's a lot of right there for somebody dating. That is three fun opportunities to really experience that person in a different way
Yeah.
beyond the alcohol situation, just, shopping with them, which is really kind of fun.
Yeah.
And
You learn a
yeah,
lot about somebody in that situation.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And kind of going back to what we're talking about for today, that in any of those situations, I've absolutely had a coffee with someone where they put Bailey's in their coffee. I
Oh,
mean, if you
oh,
go in Austin, if you go to Radio for a coffee, they have a full bar and people can get a boozy coffee, or going
oh,
shopping and going to lunch. 100%. That person could have had a few drinks at lunch before going shopping. So though that's what I mean. Like in your case, you've seen this person drinking and you've seen this person not drinking. If that person chose to drink in all of those scenarios, it's just something to pay attention to, I would say.
yeah. And yes, I think, and I'm not judgmental about I'm not judgmental about any of this. I love a good Bloody Mary,
Sure.
mostly if I'm in San Francisco overlooking the ocean and thinking about some clam chowder. And um, and I, in my younger days, love nothing more than a boozy lunch. Now, at my age, if I did something like that, I have to go to the bed right after
Yep.
that.
Have to have a little disco nap before you can do anything else. Yes. Yeah, and I
So,
want to be clear that I'm not judgy about it either, but when you're in that culture, it seems really normal to you. Like, oh, doesn't everybody drink at lunchtime? No, not everyone drinks at lunchtime. And so I'm just here to offer a different perspective, that if you're with someone who's, going out to a normal lunch on a normal day and you're with someone who's drinking, it's something to pay attention to, because the average person does not actually drink at lunchtime. And sorry if that offends everyone, but it's true. If you are the person who has to have drinks at breakfast and lunch, you might
oh
want to
yeah,
take a look at it.
for sure, you
Yeah.
might. Uh,
Yes. Not.
what do you think about this conversation we're having? Where does this come into play about your perceptions of alcohol in your life when you're dating? Like how it fits in your life?
Can you say a little bit more about the question?
Well, so I'll just say for me is that there are things that I love. I love to cook and I love to drink wine. And those two things go hand in hand a lot for me. Um, and so when I'm meeting somebody, that's not anything I bring that forward. I'm like, yes, I, that's something I enjoy doing in the evenings.
Hmm.
And because I also do want to get a sense from somebody whether or not they're going to be weird about that, if that triggers them in some way. I mean, I think those are discussions that you have to have with somebody.
Yeah, for sure. And I would compare it to something that some of our next door neighbors are some of our really good friends, and one of them is vegan. And when they come over, we accommodate that and make some food that is vegan food. And I don't get bent out of shape about it. Like, she doesn't eat animal products. Like, okay. she's not asking me to stop eating animal products. She's not asking me to not put cheese on something or whatever. She's just not going to eat it if I do that. And I think we get weird about it when it's alcohol. Like if you were dating someone who was celiac and couldn't eat gluten, you can't cook pasta anymore. Like, okay, who cares? Like, but when it's alcohol, we tend to put a different weight on that. So I just think it's something interesting to think about, that we will accommodate a lot of things for people. Like, I don't think you would refuse to date someone that was gluten-free, or you wouldn't refuse to date someone who was vegan. You would think, wow, I'm going to have to rethink how I do things, but you wouldn't refuse to date them. And I think when it comes to alcohol, we're like, oh, what? They don't drink? Forget it.
Well, and I do, again, that's really on you to, I think, like for me, I don't care whether somebody drinks. I mean, I care if they drink too much. I don't care if they don't drink. As long as they're happy in the life that they have built in that, and that when we sit down at the end of the day, we enjoy each other, and I can be present for them over my glass of wine, and they can be present with me over their mocktail or whatever it is they want to bring to the party.
Yes.
And so to me, that's the balance of just both people sort of owning that. But if you're imposing one way or the other, I feel like then that's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, that you brought up such a good point, because that is about both people making a conscious decision not to harsh the other person's vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I don't drink, I'm not going to harsh your vibe and ask you to not drink. And if you do drink, like, don't harsh my vibe by making me feel bad about not drinking. So it's perfect. It's about boundaries, like me taking care of myself and you taking care of yourself, and then moving forward.
And showing up. Yes. And I was just speak for myself, but I know this is true for you too. Most importantly, being present when you're with someone, just making sure that you are at present, and
Yes.
that whatever you're doing is not blocking you from really connecting to that person and being with that person. That's separate. That's separate and aside from anything that really alters your behaviors and things like that. I mean, that's more subtle, I think.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, either thing. I think the sober person could block themselves from connecting because they're worried about what the other person's doing. And I think that the person who's not sober could also do something that makes themselves not present. So that's a really good point. Just staying present is the key. But I do want to be clear that someone having like an off night, and maybe someone having one incident of over drinking, I don't find that to be a red flag. I think if you see that happening consistently, especially at the beginning, I think it is something to pay attention to. But just someone having a one-off night and overdoing it one time, yeah, that could just be a slip up, or something that happens once a year.
The other thing, I agree with that. And the other thing is noticing, for me, it would be noticing whether or not someone just wakes up not feeling very good every morning. Mm-hmm. And so they're just not, I mean, that would harsh my vibe. I like to wake up, and most mornings, I like to go swim or work out, or just, mornings are a great time for me. I'm in a good mood. I would definitely notice if somebody, maybe they're not acting out, maybe they're not appearing to show all the red flags around alcohol, but if they wake up feeling kind of cruddy every morning because they themselves feel like, oof, I drank one too many, I did the thing, that's going to harsh my vibe.
Yeah. It's interesting that you're saying that, because when I was a drinker, if you had asked me, like, are you hungover in the mornings, I would have said absolutely not. When we lived in Austin, I would get up and go to 5:30 CrossFit every single morning. And I would have wine coming out of my pores that I'm sure everyone else noticed, but I got up, I did my thing. I was never the person who would stay in the bed until 10 a.m. Once I stopped drinking, I cannot tell you how miraculous it was, the way I felt in the mornings. I'm like, oh my God, this is how people feel in the mornings. I literally had no idea that I was in fact hungover, but I didn't recognize it because it was common. It didn't stop me from functioning. But I did. I felt foggy. I had a headache. I felt sluggish. I just didn't feel I didn't feel great, but I didn't even notice it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, for sure, somebody not feeling their best in the mornings can impact their dating partner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the bigger picture though is just look at someone's behavior patterns. And if they have patterns of drinking that don't work for you, notice that at the beginning, because that doesn't get better over time. That gets worse over time.
That's very key, is understanding that if you are seeing things like that, it's probably not getting better.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
gonna, wait for it to fix itself.
Yeah. And just making sure that you're asking yourself, like, do you feel safe and connected with this person, whether they're drinking or not? How do you feel? Like, do you feel uneasy, or do you feel on edge about what they're going to do, or if they're going to get too loud? And I remember my mentor telling me this phrase one time, to say to someone who's over drinking, that drinking takes you away from being the person that I love. And I think
Mm,
that's just such a kind way of saying that to someone. Like, I love you, and I love this sober version of you. And when you drink, it takes you away from being that person.
mm, that's good.
Yeah.
What about this idea of uh, making an assumption? I do think that people make big assumptions that if you aren't drinking, that something went horribly wrong or something is
Yes.
terrible, right?
Yes, for sure. And we have a friend who has a podcast. It's called Pammy Out Loud. You should check that out. I'm going to give her a shout out.
Hmm.
But she just did a podcast about this. And she said she also has chosen to stop drinking a handful of years ago. And she said, when I was drinking, no one ever asked me if I was an alcoholic. And as soon as I stopped drinking, everyone started saying, wait, are you an alcoholic? And she said, I find that so ironic, which I think
It
that's
is.
hilarious.
It is hilarious.
Yeah. And so I think you're correct. Like, don't make an assumption that someone has a problem. You have no idea. And as a sober person, it doesn't bother me at all to talk about why I don't drink. And I, whether you identify as the word alcoholic or not, or whether you identify as a problem drinker, or you just decided for health reasons or for mental health reasons, it's just not a good fit for you. Yeah, don't hesitate to ask the person questions, but ask from a respectful place.
Right. I have a handful of friends who have changed their drinking habits drastically as they've aged, just because it makes them feel like shit.
Yeah.
And that, I'm saying that meaning just a drink or two,
Yeah.
it just makes them tired or sleepy, or they just don't. And so they just decided they don't want to do it anymore. They just save it for very special occasions or whatever. And it's not because they were doing anything weird around alcohol. It's just your body doesn't process it the same as you
Yeah.
age.
That's true. And I think that if you are a drinker dating a non-drinker, be honest about your own relationship with alcohol. Like, if you're someone who likes to drink every day, don't try to hide that, or don't try to minimize how much you drink, because it's going to come out, or you're going to be miserable trying to hold yourself back because of the person you're dating. So be honest with your sober date about your relationship with alcohol.
Yep. Agree with that fully. And avoid guilt tripping. And that's just the idea. If you don't care, I mean, it's sort of like somebody putting their shit on the person that's sober.
Uh-huh.
You know, well,
Yes, absolutely.
is it okay if I drink, sort of thing? It's just own yourself in that space.
Yeah, for sure. And that can go either way. Like, if you're the sober person, don't guilt trip someone for drinking. Like, no, that's a terrible idea. So yeah, just letting your person have their own behavior and not trying to control it on either side is super important.
Right. Or don't guilt trip anybody for wanting to eat a lot of cotton candy at night. I'm just saying.
For those of you who haven't listened to all of our episodes, that's a little teaser to go back and listen to something from the beginning.
Okay, Monique, you know who you are out there that said it.
That's right. Yep. One of our friends and listeners wouldn't date someone because she had eaten cotton candy for dinner the night before.
And now we refer to her as the cotton candy lady.
She will forever be known as that. Yep. So remember too that if you are dating someone who doesn't drink, I'm going to just, to the horn of sober folks here, but sober folks are often pretty good communicators, and we're often pretty emotionally attuned because we're not checking ourselves out. So, you view that as a strength in a potential dating relationship. That does not have to be something that hinders you from having a good time in any way.
Yeah. Well, the people that I do know that are fully sober are very good communicators.
Yeah, I think, sometimes it means you've done the work and you learn those things. But if you are the sober person, here are some things to watch out for. It seems weird, but people randomly pressure you to drink. It seems weird when you're a full grown adult that there's peer pressure around that, but people will be like, oh, just have one. Like, why not? Everyone else is having a drink. I've gotten that literally from waiters. I've gotten it from, yeah. I mean, none of my close friends would do that, but I've gotten it from, acquaintances. It'd be like, can't you just have one? It's a celebration. And you're like, yeah.
That brings up a thought for me of, if you're dating someone and they've told you that they were sober and then they start drinking, or they drink but I'm just going to enjoy a drink with you. That scare the hell out of me. I'm just going to say that right there.
Yep. And it happens so often. I can't tell you how often people will, it's weird. I see this with with mental health things too. It's like, well, I've been taking my medication and now I feel great. I don't think I need that medication anymore. And you're like, no, girl, that's why you feel good, because you've been taking that antidepressant. And it's like, I'm doing really well without drinking. I think it's okay if I have a drink now. You're like, no. Bad idea, friend. So yes, I agree that if someone's been sober or a non-drinker for a long time and then they start drinking again, yep, you should pay attention to that.
I do not want to be the person that somebody does that with. No.
Yes. So let's talk about, if you're dating someone on either a sober person and you're not sober, or you are sober, you're dating someone who's not. Let's talk about when to talk to that person and when to walk away.
Well, I don't know that there is a perfect answer to that, but when to talk to someone. Are you asking when to talk to someone when you notice an issue, or just talking up front about the fact that you're sober?
I think what I was thinking of in my mind was like, if you notice that someone overdrank, let's say the night before, we might tend to tiptoe around that. But is there a way to broach a conversation about that, or should you just give up and walk away?
I probably wouldn't address it one time. I probably wouldn't. But if I saw it a second time, then I probably would, like, hey, I probably would say something like, is everything okay? Is this something that, happens often, or?
Yeah, that's funny because obviously I have not started dating someone as a non-drinker, but because Joe and I were drinking when we got together, and then I stopped drinking in the midst of that. But if I went out on a date with someone and they got super drunk, even if it was the first time I had seen it, I would probably say, whoa, how are you feeling this morning? You really tied one on last night. So I probably would bring it up because I would want to see how they responded.
Yeah.
And I think if they got really defensive about it, or, if they were dismissive about it, that would probably be a red flag for me.
Yeah. Also, I do think you would notice this has happened to me before in a dating situation where someone has walked away and the next morning blamed something that on the fact that they had too much to drink. And honestly, it wasn't anything big. I didn't really even notice anything, but they brought it up as if, oh, I should, I can't, that was one too many, and it made me want to kiss you or something.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that caught my attention.
Yeah, I think that is something to pay attention to. So in kind of wrapping things up and thinking about what we want people to take away from this, I think the first thing that I want to say is that if you see some red flags, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're dating a bad person or that you shouldn't date this person. It just means to pause and pay attention before you move forward and dive all the way in.
Yeah, trust your gut.
Yeah. Yep. Like if her drinking makes you feel nervous, or if you feel anxious, or if you feel like you're having to babysit somebody, like that's not fun. That's a red flag.
Ooh, big red
And
flag too if they throw up. Mm-mm.
yep. They yeah, somebody's throwing up on your one of your first dates or any date. Actually, no,
No,
no.
no. I mean, if you have a virus, that's okay. I mean, I don't love it, but that's okay. But you throw up, we're
Nope,
not having. There's no second date there.
not having it. And if you are someone who throws up from drinking, girl,
Get
take a
it?
look.
Look, I'm telling you.
Yep.
And
So
also, we're talking about just not ignoring incompatibility
yeah.
around your substance use.
Yeah, and that could mean that you like to party it up and you don't want to date someone who's sober. Like that is also a form of incompatibility. So just notice that because it can really become a major stressor later on.
Yeah. I mean, this one, I don't think we need to tell the audience it's a red flag, although I think there are plenty of people out there that stay in it. But people who get angry, abusive, inappropriate when they've had too much, I mean, you need to just don't walk, run
Yep.
away from that.
Yep. Yeah, because I think what happens is that alcohol lowers your barriers. And if you're someone who's an angry drunk, it's because you've got some anger in there that you probably need to deal with. And the alcohol is just allowing it to come out. So, yeah, I mean, the most important thing is just remember that your own comfort and safety matter. Whether you are the person who drinks more or less than your date, make sure that you feel comfortable with that.
All right.
Okay, kids. Well, that is a wrap for today. If any of this resonated with you, if you or someone you know is dating a party girl, please share this episode. Sharing is really what's helping us grow, and we are trying to grow our numbers. We need you, and we need your listens, and we need your shares. So please send us any sad or funny drunken moments that you have from your dating life. We're featuring these in our after party episode, so make sure you tune in for that. And join us next week when our topic is going to be I'm not clingy, you're just distant. Dating with different attachment styles. Please follow us, subscribe to us, check us out on Spotify, Apple, or even YouTube if you want to see us in person. And thank you, as always, for listening to the Dateable AF podcast, where we help you find your happy ending.
Remember, be bold, be kind, and for the love of queer dating, don't text your ex. Stay dateable.
AF.